What's happening, everybody? Justin, Bridgewater's finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at NerdTees, and welcome to Week 10. We are officially in double digits now of my weekly CFL football pick show for the 2022 CFL season, and we're coming off of a nice, tidy little 8-4 week there in Week 9. We've been up and down and up and down and up and down the last few weeks, but we're trying something here, because it seems like my good weeks have been attached to my collared shirts. We're going to try to have ourselves a good week wearing a t-shirt. We'll see what happens. So yeah, 8-4 last week. Feels pretty tidy to me. 3-1 straight up, 3-1 against the spread as well. Went even money on my totals. Now 26-9 picking the games straight up this season. 24-11 against the spread, and still a couple games over 500 with the totals at 19-16. Overall, 69-36 picking the CFL so far this year. It's up well over 65%. It's a nice spot to be in. I mean, look, I would be thrilled to get to 70 by the time the season ends. That would be incredible for me. Whether it works or not, you got to be really darn good in this league to get above 70, but that's the stretch goal. That's what we got our eyes on moving forward. Speaking of what we have our eyes on moving forward, it's better performances in CFL fantasy. Had a down week last week, only 64.8 points. Now, I talked myself out of a couple of pieces that I had originally given you in my fantasy lineup last week, primarily Dalton Schoen and Brady Oliveira. I talked myself out of both of those picks, and that kind of stung me. I would have certainly had a better week had I stuck with the two of them, but I mean, my quarterback gave me 1.2 points, so it's understandable that it was a bad week. So only 64.8 last week. My MVP was Calgary running back Dedrick Mills. Now, he gets the start over Kadeem Carey, who did not play last week. Put up a 100-yard game on 16 carries. He had himself an excellent game. 2 catches for 32 yards in the receiving game as well. 15.2 points. He was my MVP. I sit at 745.1 on the season so far, which did drop me down 2 more spots in the official Atlantic Schooners CFL Fantasy Football League, now in 13th place out of 48. The gap between me and first place grew. I lost 18 points to the team in first place. I lost 5.3 points to the team in 10th, and I actually lost 35 points to the team in 20th place. Now, I still lead 20th place by over 40, but that's a ton to give up in 1 week. That team had a great week. Me, not so much. However, better things on the horizon, and my CFL fantasy football roster for Week 10 is right in front of your eyes right now, and we are going to roll with Dane Evans. There's a lot of question marks at the quarterback position, I feel anyway, this week. Dane Evans feels like the safe play for me. Also one of the more economical plays in fantasy this week. He's looking for his 4th 300-yard game, and he would be looking for back-to-back 300-yard games. We are actually stacking him with Tim White at receiver, one of his obviously more important pieces in the receiving game, and a little more economical than, say, a Stephen Dunbar. At running back, we're going Jamal Morrow and Brady Oliveira. Again, he had another big game last week, coming off of what has to be the best 3-game stretch of his pro career. So Morrow and Oliveira at running back. We're complementing Tim White with Keon Hatcher at the wide receiver position. We had to grab an economical piece of that BC Lions offense. And we're flexing Reggie White Jr. He is a significant part of what the Alouettes do throwing the football. Now, yes, does the Trevor Harris injury concern me? It certainly does. He's got a bit of a wonky back, so it's definitely something to pay attention to, but I still think Reggie White, regardless of who's under center, is going to have a nice piece of that Alouettes pass game. So that's my fantasy lineup for Week 10. Let's hope for better than last week. Your Week 10 slate of games looks like this. We got the Ottawa REDBLACKS on the natural bye this week. We are rematching 2 matchups from last week. Montreal now in Winnipeg taking on the Bombers. Toronto in Hamilton taking on the Ticats. Those 2 games took place in Montreal and Toronto last week, respectively. We got the BC Lions in Calgary to take on the Stampeders. That's a marquee matchup in the West Division. And we've got the Saskatchewan Roughriders in Edmonton to take on the Elks. We'll start off right at the top of the week with those two rematches from Week 9. Montreal at Winnipeg is where we'll start. Montreal dropping their second straight game to fall to 2-6 on the season now. Last week losing 35-20 against Winnipeg. That game was in Montreal. Winnipeg obviously moving to 9-0 on the season with the 35-20 win. And what we're going to do this week, I want to take a second at least to look at how last week's X Factors kind of played themselves out. Now with Saskatchewan and Edmonton, they didn't get to have that treatment last week, so we're going to go ahead and give them the X Factor treatment this week. But for the first three games, I want to at least take a look at how last week's X Factor performed and how it related to what their success or lack thereof was on the field last week. So for Montreal, I said the X factor for Montreal is that Trevor Harris to Geno Lewis connection. Geno with 9 catches for 123 yards, targeted 11 times in the pass game, had a 56% completion share of Trevor Harris's pass attempts and a 58% share of Trevor Harris's targets. So it was no mistaking where the ball was going early and often last week. They had success, didn't lead to the Owls having success. The Alouettes defense came to play last week, especially in the first half. They generated 3 turnovers in the first half of that game, including 2 interceptions off of Zach Collaros, who we're going to talk about in a second. Only 7 points against in that first half. They only gave up 146 total yards. That's definitely something for the Alouettes to build upon. Plus, they're playing more disciplined football as of late, maybe just last week. But again, they're looking for things to, as a 2-6 football team, they're looking for stuff to build on. That's something you can build on. Also, I'm not anywhere close to advocating for a quarterback change here, even though Montreal is at 2-6. Trevor Harris needs to learn to trust somebody who's not Geno Lewis. Yes, I said he was the X factor last week. Yes, their connection has been magical this year, but no team is built on one wide receiver. You have other options there. You have Reggie White, who's been a big part of the offense, needs to be more. You've got Jake Weineke, who has barely been part of the offense this year at all. You've got pass-catching running backs. They need to spread the ball more to find more success on the offensive side. As it was, 11 targets last week. You knew where the football was going in critical situations. If your offense can be predicted, it's going to be tough for you to find success. Now for Winnipeg, of course, I said their X factor last week was Zach Collaros, like arguably the best quarterback in the league. A down game for him last week, completed less than 60% of his passes, only 210 yards passing. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but he also threw 3 interceptions in that game. And it's testament to X factors are important, but when you're a really good team, a whole team effort is going to overcome those situations when your X factor's not quite what it normally is. That was what the case was last week. And Winnipeg is that team. I mentioned Brady Oliveira a little bit earlier. Like I said, I think this is the best 3-game stretch of his career. Over the last 3 games, he's carried the ball 45 times, 264 yards rushing, and a rush touchdown, scoring his first touchdown last week since all the way back in Week 3. There may be no team in the CFL, and this kind of goes into what I just said a little bit ago, maybe no team in the CFL who adjusts better at halftime than the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, because that felt like 2 football games. The first half was like its own game. The second half was a completely different game, completely different team. They made the adjustments that Montreal was not able to make. I have to ask what's going to happen, speaking of the adjustments and the coaching, what's going to happen with Mike O'Shea? I don't think he's under contract for next year, so I wonder if that's a question that's kind of looming in the minds of Bombers fans and Bombers players. As competitive and fun as that game was last week, it's certainly through 3 quarters, my opinion has not changed on glass cannons versus juggernauts. So, look, it's another matchup of the same juggernaut against the same glass cannon. Now, what I will warn against is there is a look-ahead possibility here, because Winnipeg is finally mercifully going to get its first bye of the season in Week 11. So they could potentially be looking ahead to their bye. And I noticed that Adam Bighill did not practice, I think, yesterday. Either yesterday or today. Yesterday, I think it was. So the injuries and the bumps and bruises and everything definitely adding up over this grueling 10 straight game stretch. They could get caught looking ahead to their bye week next week. They're too good a team, I think, to lose this game outright, but there's maybe some other stuff to talk about here. So I am going to take Winnipeg at home to beat the Montreal Alouettes, especially where the game's in Winnipeg. So tough to beat Winnipeg there. So we're going to take the Bombers to beat the Alouettes. Now, against the spread, the Bombers are laying 11.5 points as a home favorite here, playing their 10th consecutive game. It's a double-digit point spread. They won the game by 15 last week, but it was a competitive game through 3/4 of it. This is just too many points for me. I don't love the play either way, but it's worth noting that the Alouettes are above 500 against the spread away from home this year at 3-2. Whenever you have a situation like that, I always like to note it wherever I can, because that's a significant accomplishment for a team, especially a team that's not what I would consider a really good team, and I certainly can't consider the Alouettes that. They are above 500 against the spread away from home. I'm going to take them with the points. Let's take the Alouettes plus the 11.5 points, but again, I don't like them to win the game outright. Total in the game set at 48.5. These two teams have combined to average 53.5 points in their games over the last 3 games. So I think we're going to grab the over on this one. Let's go over 48.5 points in Winnipeg, Montreal. And I'm going to stick with the exact same final score that I stuck with last week. If you'll recall, I went Winnipeg 31, Montreal 23. And the game ended 35-20, so relatively close on the score prediction there. I'm going to keep it exactly the same. Let's go Winnipeg 31, Montreal 23. Game goes over the 48.5 points. Montreal covers plus 11.5 against the spread. Let's go to Hamilton now. Argos and Ticats rematching a game last week that was won 34-20 by the Toronto Argos. Once again, another really close, really competitive football game that certainly looked like it was swinging one way early and went the other way by the end. Argos moved their record to 4-3 on the season. Hamilton dropping their record to 2-6. Now for Toronto, their X factors last week, they trailed the game 13-0. And 14-6. But what did I talk about last week? This is a team with a flair for the dramatic. And how do they end this game? They seal it with a late pick 6. They got a touchdown off of a punt block that they returned all the way back to the house. So flair for the dramatic, we will certainly say that. And it worked out in the Argos' favor once again last week. And I'm going to take nothing away from this Argos team. They got that win and they earned that win. It certainly wasn't pretty. In a lot of ways, I think the Argos were the second best team on the field for a lot of that game. And it's no secret, the Argos are a team that I've struggled with all season long, really trying to pin down exactly what they are. But I think I have something here that I haven't really heard other people talk about. The Argos win games because the Argos win on second down. So follow me here. They have the second best second down conversion rate in the CFL. It's like 54 or actually maybe even be higher than that, in the like 56 or 57s. It's the second best rate in the entire CFL. They have the second fewest 2-and-outs in the league, and they only allow second down conversions less than 46% of the time. When you're converting on second down and when you're extending drives, you're eating up clock, you're keeping the ball with your offense, and when you're forcing the other team into more 2-and-outs than they're forcing you into, you're putting yourself in advantageous situations. That is one area where I think the Argos have been exemplary this year, and there haven't been a lot of areas where you can look at the Argos and go, yo, that's a really good team. They're a team, they're an average team, they're a middling team in some cases, but that's one area where I think the Argos are actually pretty special. Now for the Ticats, their X factor from last week, I said they had all the momentum going into this game, having won 2 of their last 3, arguably the hottest team in the East Division, just based on that fact. And they certainly started this game hot. They scored the first 13 points of the game and led 14-6 at the half, but the ghosts of the early season returned for the Ticats, being outscored 28-6 in the second half of that game. And it was the Ticats being their own worst enemy here. They had 3 turnovers. They generated nothing on their own with their defense. They really wasted a solid outing by the offense, who put up nearly 400 total yards, and Seth Small at the kicking position going 4 for 4 on his kicks. They kind of waste a pretty decent offensive performance, which is unfortunate. 14 second half points allowed by the Ticats, and I mentioned it off the top, off of a blocked punt and a pick six. This was anybody's game. The final score just does not reflect that. But it's those little things, those little mistakes that the great teams don't make, that the Ticats have been making a lot this year. And again, that second half play, something's got to give there. It's only week 10. And so we're only heading into week 10, but time's kind of running out here for somebody in the East Division to make a run. Toronto has kept this division competitive. If you had a team like, say, Calgary in the East Division, they'd be running away with things. Look at it this way. Toronto's 4-3, Hamilton's 2-6. If you're Hamilton, what would you rather be? Would you rather be 3-6 chasing 4-4, or would you rather be 2-7 chasing 5-3? It ain't going to be good. Like, you need to hit the gas now, because if you don't hit the gas now, you're going to run out of runway. That's the way I'm going with this game, and it was kind of the way I went with it last week. Like, oh, Hamilton's got to start now. If they win, they're tied. But, like, they really got to start now. Like, you put yourself in a position where you almost have to beat this team 3 straight games to really keep this competitive here in the East Division. I think it starts this week. Let's take the Hamilton Ticats at home to beat the Toronto Argos. Now, on the line, Hamilton is a small favorite, just a 2-point favorite at home, and we're going to go ahead and lay those 2 points. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. Hamilton -2. Total in the game's at 46.5, and it is the smallest total of this week, but I am still going to go under on it. This is a pretty darn good number. Like, this is right around what I think the number deserves to be in this game, and it is, again, the smallest number of the week. It's not a good sweat, but I think both of these defenses come to play in this game. I think the total stays under very marginally, but I'm going to stay under 46.5 points in Hamilton, Toronto. Let's go Ticats 24, Argos 21. And I'm going to take this opportunity, as I always do, to shout out my great friends and sponsors at Nerd Tees, folks. If you don't remember from the episode last week, Nerd Tees is heading into a little renovation, little moving party for their physical location. So if you are going to be getting an online order in with them, unfortunately, you are currently too late. They are in the process of making their move now, so you're going to have to wait a little bit, I think until the 20th or 21st. Use my promo code BWFinest. It's going to save you 15% at checkout. You're also going to get free shipping on any order in Canada over $100. Just a great value. Also great conversion rate on the US dollar if you're one of my US viewers. Today's blend is Strawberry Daiquiri. We are enjoying ourselves a lovely summer drink on a hot summer evening. We've been really going through a heat wave here. It's starting to dissipate a little bit now, but as you can tell by the sweatbands on my forehead, it's still kind of spicy. Nerdtees.ca, promo code BWFinest, save you 15%, get your free shipping, find yourself something to love, or find someone you love something to love. You can do it on Nerdtees.ca. Let's go to Calgary now, where the Stampeders are going to play host to a marquee West Division matchup. The BC Lions are in town to take on Calgary. BC extending their record to 6-1 on the season. Winners of 3 straight games now, so don't look now, but the BC Lions are all the way back. 46-14 drubbing against the Edmonton Elks. That game was in BC. And I talked about the X factor for them last week being that defense. Obviously, it was a massive offensive performance, but the defense only gave up 14 points. Admittedly, not to a great team, but still, that defense was stout. They only gave up 219 total yards against. Opportunistic, they generated 3 turnovers, and unrelenting, sacking Taylor Cornelius 5 times in that game. At every level, the BC Lions defense was dominant. Blue Bombers dominant, if I may say so. But yes, because it does make the headlines, Nathan Rourke was colossal in that football game. Shades of his early season form for sure. Completing 92% of his passes. I think he only had 3 incomplete passes for the entirety of the game. 477 yards passing, 5 passing touchdowns. It's Madden on easy level numbers. Adding 25 yards on 5 carries and a rush touchdown. So responsible for 6 total touchdowns in that football game last week. What an absolute monster. And he spread the ball around. Dominique Rhymes, 91 yards on 9 catches and a hat trick, 3 touchdowns. Lucky Whitehead, a touchdown, 6 catches for 148 yards. He had 4 receivers, did Nathan Rourke, who had at least 5 catches for 82 yards. The Elks just put up no resistance at all in this football game, and it just shows that's the level that they're on. And that's the level the BC Lions are on. The Calgary Stampeders picking up a 17-3 win in Ottawa back in Week 9, moving their record to 5-2 on the season. In terms of their X Factor did not play in this game. I said it was Kadeem Carey. He did not play last week. He was again replaced by Dedrick Mills, who we talked about a little bit earlier. I had him in my fantasy roster, and he rewarded me with a 100-yard game on the ground on 16 carries. He had himself a pretty excellent CFL debut. Now, yes, they did pick up the win, but against better opposition, which they're going to be playing this week, the offensive performance that they put up against Ottawa is not going to cut it. 252 total yards of offense. Bo Levi Mitchell below 50% completing his passes and less than 150 yards passing with an interception. Did not throw a touchdown last week. That offensive performance is not going to beat almost any other team in the West Division. But where Bo struggled, that secondary for the Calgary Stampeders really stepped up in that game. 3 interceptions, 6 pass knockdowns as well, so they were active and opportunistic. But they have likely lost defensive back Trey Roberson for the rest of the season. He had surgery on his knee. I would be very, very, very surprised unless Calgary makes a run to the Grey Cup. I'd be very surprised if we see Trey Roberson again this year. So kind of like I alluded to, the winner here may very well have the inside track towards the number 2 seed in the West Division. I don't see anybody catching Winnipeg, but the number 2 seed is important. It's a home playoff game against a really good opponent. So it is definitely important. Winner here probably has the inside track to that. Critical for both teams on that level. I'm going to be perfectly honest, not knowing whether Kadeem is going to play or not definitely casts some doubts on the Stampeders side for me. And genuinely, I don't think Bo Levi Mitchell beats this secondary. The Lions secondary continues to be underrated. It's not talked about nearly enough in terms of the best secondaries in this league. I think they're right up there with anybody, if not the number 1 secondary in this league. I don't trust Bo the way he's playing right now. I don't trust Bo to beat that secondary. I like the BC Lions on the road in Calgary to get the win here. Calgary's only a very marginal underdog here at home, so I thought maybe I might get some plus value on the BC Lions. Didn't work out, but I do think the Lions are the better football team right now. So let's take the Lions on the road in Calgary to beat the Stamps. On the line, BC laying 1.5 here on the road in Calgary. I like them to win. It's a small price to pay. I'm comfortable laying the 1.5. Total in the game set at 53. Now, this is the biggest total of the week, and I am staying under on this one. A lot of people are going to love the over here, but this is 2 really good defenses. And over their last 3 games, respectively, you think about how many points the BC Lions tend to score. These 2 teams combined over their last 3 games, respectively, are averaging about 44 points total in a whole game. So with a number like 53, I have to stay under that. That's 2 possessions. It's a 2-possession difference. So I don't think the way the teams are playing right now reflects this number. So we're going to stick under 53 points in BC Calgary. Let's go Lions 27, Stamps 17. Lions win, Lions cover. Point total stays under. And the last game we're going to look at sees the Saskatchewan Roughriders coming off the bye, now with an even record of 4-4 on the year, losers of 3 straight games. So the bye week couldn't have come quickly enough for the Riders, I should say. Facing the Edmonton Elks, who we've mentioned a little bit here, they've lost 2 straight games, their record falling to 2-6. Riders 2 weeks ago dropping a 2-possession decision against the BC Lions at Mosaic Stadium. Again, not an easy building to win in. And when you don't do what makes you special, you don't beat special teams. The BC Lions are a special football team. The Riders did not do what makes them special. That's what I talked about in the do's and don'ts with them a couple of weeks ago. Stick to what makes you special, controlling the football game with the run game and looking for those opportunities on defense. They didn't do that. They are a full miss on their do's and don'ts. They only ran the ball 11 times with a weapon like Jamal Morrow, and they allowed Cody Fajardo to be in situations where he's holding the ball a little too long and taking hits. I think he was sacked 4 times. They did only have 1 designed quarterback run for him in that game, which is a good thing, but he was just holding on to the ball for too long. They didn't have a game plan that allowed him to get the ball, get rid of it quickly, avoid being hit, move the ball down the field. They failed to do that. Now, we will give both the Riders and the Elks in this game the X Factor treatment, and we will review how they did next week. For the Riders, the X Factor here is rest. They played 8 straight games. They had to travel to Nova Scotia to do Touchdown Atlantic. They got COVID as a result of that. They've been dealing with a bunch of injuries. Their bye came at a critical time for them. They are now as rested and as healthy as they have been in almost a month. So that's got to be the X factor for them. Sasky knows they're a better team than Edmonton, but now they've got the complementary rest to allow themselves to be the team that they're capable of being. I think that's the biggest deciding factor for them this week. The Elks, as I mentioned, moved to 2-6 on the season after getting blown out in BC by the Lions 46-14, and they were overwhelmed by way too much versus not nearly enough. In terms of the Elks' do's and don'ts, they were a full miss as well. I said you got to try to find out what you got in Malik Irons. I think he touched the ball 3 times. Now, 2 of those touches were 2 carries for 10 yards and a touchdown. 5 yards per carry, and one of those 2 carries was a touchdown. Maybe give him the ball a little more often. That's a possibility. But anyway, they decided they didn't want to do that. And no snaps at quarterback for anybody not named Taylor Cornelius. I know Trey Ford didn't play in the game, but Kyle Loxley played. And I kind of would have liked to have seen, especially when the game got out of hand, put Kyle Loxley back there and see what you've got in him as a quarterback for a quarter or for the second half or what have you. Like, you're trying to figure out what you got. If the answer's nothing, the answer's nothing. But you got to ask those questions and you got to find out. It was a full miss for me from the Elks. For the Elks, however, their X factor coming into this game is that receiving core. They've got a really good 1-2-3 receiving core. You're looking at Kenny Lawler, Darrell Walker, and Manny Arsenault, who's kind of been a revelation this year. You've also got Kyle Loxley in there that you can use at wide receiver, but the quarterback's got to be able to get them the ball. So it's a really good 1-2-3, but do you have somebody that can put the ball in their hands? I don't know that they necessarily do have that. I'm more critical, I think, of Taylor Cornelius than maybe a lot of people are. But that receiving core can be an X factor. Let's see if they will be. This is either the ultimate get-right spot for the Riders or the ultimate trap spot if you feel like backing the Elks. And genuinely, I can kind of see this either way. Whichever way you want to go on this game personally, I can totally understand it and appreciate it. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not yet ready to believe that Edmonton beats a team in the West. That's kind of just where I'm at right now. So we're going to have to go ahead with the Saskatchewan Roughriders here on the road in Edmonton, picking up the win over the Elks. Now, against the spread, the Riders are laying 5 points here as a kind of marginal road favorite. I mean, 5 points isn't marginal. I shouldn't say that. But, I mean, you'd think that this game would be at least a touchdown if the Riders were playing anything like the Riders lately. They're not. It feels kind of gross either way, but the Elks not only have yet to win at home this year, they haven't covered at home this year either. So the home performances are just not there. So we're going to go ahead and lay these 5 points here on the Riders. Hopefully well-rested, hopefully healthier. I think they cover the 5. Total in the game set at 48.5 points. The teams have combined to average 52.5 points per game over their last 3 respectively. So we're going to go ahead and grab the over on this one. Let's go over 48.5 points in Saskatchewan, Edmonton. Let's go Riders 30, Elks 21. There you go, folks. Those are your picks for Week 10 in the CFL in 2022. Go over them here with you one more time. I got the Winnipeg Blue Bombers beating the Montreal Alouettes for the 2nd week in a row, 31-23. I'm taking the Alouettes with the points plus 11.5 in a game that goes over 48.5 points. I got the Hamilton Tiger Cats beating the Toronto Argos 24-21. I'm laying -2 with the Hamilton Tiger Cats in a game that stays under 46.5 points. I got the BC Lions going into Calgary and beating the Stampeders 27-17. I'm laying 1.5 on the BC Lions in a game that stays under 53 points. And I got the Saskatchewan Roughriders going to Edmonton and beating the Elks by a final score of 30-21. So I'm laying 5 points with the Saskatchewan Roughriders in a game that goes over 48.5. Folks, this was a Tuesday night recording special. I hope to have this up for you late this evening or super early tomorrow morning. Thank you so much for tuning in and checking out Week 10. Just another reminder there, the Nerd Tees website and the physical location in Woodstock, Ontario are closed for a couple of weeks, but that doesn't mean you can't pop over to nerdtees.ca, do a little pre-planning for when they reopen. That's it for me, Justin, Bridgewater's Finest on YouTube, Blockbuster_guy on Twitter, fueled as always by the incredible folks at Nerd Tees. Boy, I just kind of feel like keeping the content train going, you know? I might have something a little extra special for you tomorrow. If you follow me on Twitter, you know what I'm talking about. Stay tuned.